You're listening to New England Real Estate Journal Radio with Rick Kaplan, New England's source for commercial real estate news. This is New England Real Estate Journal Radio on the Money Matters Radio Network and online at moneymattersboston.com.
Welcome to the New England Real Estate Journal Radio Show. I'm Rick Kaplan with my co-host Eric Wilson, and the show today is brought to you by the New England Real Estate Journal, bringing together the commercial real estate industry for over 50 years. Find us at NEREJradio.com. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor for the show, call 800-654-4993 or email us at radio@nerej.com. Again, that's 800-654-4993 or email radio@nerej.com. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Rick. How we doing?
Good. And we have in the studio Dennis Serpone from New England Restaurant Brokers.
Good morning.
And we're going to talk a little bit about all these retail stores that are closing. And Dennis might know a little more about that as well, because he's sort of in the retail restaurant.
I'm there. I'm in the middle of it all.
But there's so many of these retailers that are closing due to a lot of saturation. Mm-hmm. You know, over the years they've been opening thousands of stores, and then also the online shopping, I guess, is hurting them. But is it hurting them, or is it just relocating their business model?
Well,
I would think they would try to revisit how their
restructure.
Restructure how their business is being shopped. I would think.
Right. I think
more and more people today are shopping online.
Right. Well, convenience.
That's just a part of society today. Everything's done online.
Right. I think you'll see. This is the continue. I think this will be a continuing trend. I think, not just retail business, but in all businesses, everyone's kind of seeing that most things, like Dennis just mentioned, is online.
Well, it's kind of a shame, because I'd rather go into a store and touch and see what I would want to buy.
Of course, certain things like food and things like that.
Well,
of course,
clothing. You would want to buy clothing online?
Some people do.
Shoes are big. People are buying.
Because your shoe size doesn't change. It's still the same.
And
you
want to
your
try
size.
them on.
Yeah,
they send them back.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've bought shoes online, and they send them to you. And if they don't fit right, you just send them right back, and they send you another pair. And if they don't fit, you send them back again.
So it's your convenience.
Yeah, but doesn't that sound like an inconvenience?
For who?
For
who? Maybe for the retailer more so than
not so much for a retailer. But if you had to try on a pair of shoes, they didn't fit, and you sent them back,
and then
if you're buying shoes online, you're not wearing them that day. It's obviously not the necessity you need shoes. You're usually buying them for something that's coming up, or
I understand. I understand that, but you got to keep packing them up and sending them back and getting another pair. Where you go into a store. You put them on, you try them, and they feel good.
Yeah.
You know what's amazing is they opened up that Market Street in Linfield. Have you been over there?
No, I haven't been there yet. But
can't get a parking space. We're talking about brick and mortar versus online shopping. Mm-hmm. You can't find a parking space almost any day of the week between the restaurants, clothing stores, gift shops, Whole Foods. It is unbelievable. And now I don't know how many stores are out there now. But they're adding on another phase, which will bring in Wahlburgers, the hamburger
nice.
magnet, so to speak,
wow.
and just expanding. So that's right now, Market Street in Linfield is the biggest, highest grossing shopping center, lifestyle center in New England.
Wow.
It just opened.
And that's what they call lifestyle centers?
Yeah, it's the old-fashioned town square.
Yeah.
Right.
As opposed to the enclosed mall.
Right.
Huge operation.
Well, it's funny because I was in Canton on Friday, and I went to, there used to be a place called the Tri-Town Mall for Washington Street in Canton, and now they converted it to an outside block.
Right, that's exactly what it is. That's a lifestyle center.
That mall used to always be dead.
Now you can't get parking space.
Yeah, this place is now packed. They could never rent the place in the mall, and now everything is full.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know what's the difference. What changed?
Environment,
the mix of stores.
Yeah,
a lot of it has to do with the mix of stores.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Plus, people like the ability to get fresh air when you walk out. It feels like you left something. When you enter a mall, you're in each store. It almost seems like a room in your house.
So does that mean the recession is over? In a limited fashion.
Yeah, I would say. Well, I think it's so funny. I said this a year back, maybe earlier on the show that recession is one of those things I think is a lot to do with mental too. I think when you tell somebody that we're in a recession, everyone kind of tightens up the money, so therefore you kind of just predicted what's about to take place. When you tell people, last year we told everybody, hey, we're out of the recession, all of a sudden money started being lent again, and people start doing things based on
Credit
kind of what we're
cards.
told.
Use
Yeah,
your credit card.
Yeah, well, it makes it easier to shop now because you can finance almost anything through a credit card. You know, or
You think that's a government conspiracy to track money?
are these all the places that are closing up?
These are all the retailers. There's some restaurants in there as well that are closing up locations. And, you know, I mean, I'm looking at the list, and it says Radio Shack 500 stores, but our last report I heard was 1,100 stores, which is quite a bit of
So
property.
Radio Shack, I'm sure you said Best Buy.
Yeah, and Best Buy is on here. They didn't have a lot of stores they were closing up,
Right.
but they were closing some.
What do you have on there for restaurants?
Two stores for Best Buy. McDonald's has 74
Stores are closing?
in Japan.
Oh.
Well, I can understand that because if it was McDonald's sushi or something like that, it might be different.
I'm sure that McDonald's don't they usually tailor their menus to whatever
The culture.
Yeah, the culture
Yeah.
they're in. So
That's
they probably
true.
have,
Yeah.
you know, whatever the
A sushi burger.
crab burger
Yeah.
instead or something like that. Yeah, something like that.
Raw.
Tuna burgers, things like that. Yeah, I'm sure they do.
But Sbarro is a
Sbarro,
restaurant,
yeah.
155 stores.
Amazing. And they were king of the hill for a while.
Yeah. I mean, that was a very popular. That was in almost every airport
Every shopping centers.
and shopping
I
centers.
can understand like Radio Shacks due to Amazon's growth as well, so that probably has a little factor in there in their competition. You were saying like Sbarro and McDonald's and some of those chains. I think that has a lot to do with the whole healthy initiative.
Yeah, well, there's a restaurant.
I know McDonald's said they've lost.
I think
what,
this
the
is a
first time
restaurant.
ever in 3 straight quarters.
Fresh and Greens. You ever hear?
Fresh and green? No.
No.
Nope. I would assume that's.
It's either a restaurant or a supermarket.
Yeah, I would assume it's organic
because
supermarket.
they have 26 Albertsons, which is a supermarket
Yeah.
chain.
Well, it's interesting. I have several chains of restaurants for sale, and not necessarily being sold because of something detrimental. They just decided that they want to change the model, and I've got 50 units on the East Coast, that are fast food, very, very successful, very popular. But the owners, because of Obamacare, have decided that it's maybe time to move on and change the model, go back to doing something else, some other food operation.
Well, that's another thing, and we can get into that in the next segment. Is because now you have to change your structure because of some of the benefits you have to offer, and if you have an increase in the minimum wage,
Government regulations.
right, you have to change a little more of how you do business and how you treat your, how you hire your employees. But I think going through this list, it looks like that Rainbow Foods is that?
Sounds like
It's also a supermarket.
Is it?
Yep.
But is that a local? I thought that was a local company.
I think they're this side of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
I think so, but I mean, I could be wrong. I know I've seen Rainbow Foods. We used to have one, but we don't anymore. That was like 5, maybe 10 years ago down the South Shore.
Yes, that's another question I have is the different, and I heard this on another show that they were talking about change versus mom and pop type restaurants or retailers, that the trend is going to start changing again, where people are wanting to go more to a mom and pop as opposed to a chain. And that's something we can discuss in the next segment as well, because that would be right in your field.
Right.
Why are people doing things like that? But we're going to go to a break right now. The show is brought to you by the New England Real Estate Journal, bringing together the commercial real estate industry for over 50 years. Find us at NEREJ.com. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor for the show, call 800-654-4993 or email us at radio@nerej.com. Again, that's 800-654-4993 or email radio@nerej.com. And we'll be right back with our interview with Dennis Serpone of New England Restaurant Brokers, and we'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network.
The next level in commercial real estate. This is New England Real Estate Radio on the Money Matters Radio Network and online at moneymattersboston.com.
we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan with my co-host Eric Wilson. And our interview of the day is brought to you by Command Security Corporation. Is the nation's most trusted and experienced provider of affordable contract security services. Command Security Corporation offices nationwide and operations at numerous major international airports. They provide complete, customized, and cost-effective security solutions for industries, businesses, institutions, and organizations of all sizes. To find out more on how Command Security Corporation can solve your security needs, contact John Dunleavy at 800-791-9102 or go to commandsecurity.com. That's John Dunleavy at 800-791-9102 or go to commandsecurity.com. And we have in the studio with us is Dennis Serpone of New England Restaurant Brokers, and we're going to talk a little bit about the restaurant industry. And also, we like our last segment, we were talking about some of the retailers that were closing and how the trend is going with restaurant and retail, I guess. Hello, Dennis.
Well, interestingly enough, we've never been busier. I have 20 brokers, and I really need more brokers.
Wow.
We set up an office on the Cape to handle restaurants and hotels because they're all tied to hospitality. And because we specialize, we have a little bit of a niche that niche that's fairly valuable. So if anybody out there is looking for a part-time job, full-time job, I need help. You can reach me at NERB for New England Restaurant Brokers, NERB at Comcast.net. My number is 617-721-9655. So if you'd like to explore the possibilities of and the opportunities with New England Restaurant Brokers, love to have you call or email.
Look at that. We're not only talking about commercial real estate and what's going on, we're even finding people jobs.
Yeah, his job was just listed right here at NERJradio.
That's
Love
right.
it.
So, so what does that entail, being a restaurant broker?
Well, fortunately, we don't sell insurance or vacuum cleaners. We help people with their problems. Consultative selling. If you're a successful restaurateur, typically, if you're successful, you want another place. Mm-hmm. So we help you find another place. If you're in trouble and you want to get out of the business, we're the guys to help you get out of business. So, and it is a constant turnover. It's amazing. I see the transition from Newbury Street to the Seaport area. I see the inner cities going out to the lifestyle centers in the suburbs. So there's a migration in and out. So it's really fascinating to watch the trends. The successful people are becoming more successful. The people who've been struggling are now bailing out, and it's an opportunity for somebody else.
I can see that industry being a little have a little excitement right now because of all these Food Network shows, and they travel around
everywhere.
To all these different restaurants, and you can see
everybody's aware.
Yeah, people are aware of the great restaurants as opposed to the restaurants that aren't so great. But there's also the new trend of something different. A lot of restaurants are starting up, and they have different styles of cooking and different.
I think what's happening is people are watching the different reality shows, and they see a restaurant in Arkansas that has a special recipe for something, and somebody over here sees it and says, "My God, what a great idea!" And they add it to their menu, and it just fuels a whole food industry. It's a fascinating industry.
I also think there's always an opening. That's why I think like Mexican, Italian, your regular Chinese that you would normally have. I think you've seen a lot of different ones. Indian
fusion.
Coming in. Yeah.
There's a lot of fusion.
Exactly.
A lot of Indian and
things you see. Right?
Indian and Chinese and Thai, Italian and.
And people love the ability to pick and choose. And today I feel like Colombian, and you can go out and there's a restaurant there now. Someone's serving that because it's something new, something different. It's different types of foods that you probably wouldn't have the opportunity to try unless you traveled. Now those people are moving to different parts of the country because they get to open these restaurants up that people are really looking to try. Restaurants
right now are one of the few places where the average person, the low-tech person, can make $100,000 a year. I mean, I've never in 31, 32 years of doing this business, I've never sold a restaurant that the owner hasn't made at least $100,000 a year. I mean, if you work a restaurant, whether it's a small pizza place or it's a big restaurant, unless you're in trouble, if you're a successful restaurant, you're making $100,000 a year or more.
Right.
A lot of them are making a lot more than that. That's somewhat mitigated by credit cards today because one of the benefits of being in the restaurant business was dealing with cash. Now it's the cash is minimized. But still, there are so many restaurants that are very successful and they're expanding. Those that are marginal are opting for something else to do.
Well, one of the things that it makes or breaks a restaurant is probably the owner. Because I've seen restaurants that are so out of the way, and you go to that restaurant and it's always busy because the food is unbelievable.
And the owner's there watching, managing.
Exactly.
Absolutely right.
And then you go to other restaurants that are in prime property and they're failing.
Well, it's interesting. Somebody just yesterday was telling me about a restaurant out in Franklin that was always very, very, very successful. The owner bought another restaurant probably 25 miles away. And he took his head manager, general manager, and head bartender with him to the second location. In a matter of weeks, it's gone downhill to the point where people are walking out of the place because the food is so bad. There's nobody managing because he's managing his new place and left the first place to an assistant manager who's evidently not that qualified. And so now he's got a problem because they're big restaurants. And if you can't manage a big restaurant, your problems are exacerbated because of the size.
So that brings up the question: how do you expand? How do you open up a new
have to have management. It's all about cultivating good manager. Working with people until you get. Even in my business, I have key brokers that I've trained, and they mentor other brokers. So it's multi-tiered, if you will. And the same thing with the restaurant business. You have to cultivate your management.
Now, I've heard of restaurants. They put in management, but they give them a percentage of the company of that one particular restaurant.
Absolutely, sure.
And that gives them some equity in their.
I was talking to a Chinese owner, and we got to talking about just that issue. And he says, every one of my employees is a partner. My head chef is a partner, the head waitress is a partner, the head waiter is a partner, and they all share in the profit. So they all have a concerted interest in the success of that restaurant.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
They want the restaurant to succeed.
Absolutely.
Gives them extra reasons to spend the extra 2, 4, 3, 5 hours
right
per night because you want to make sure everything's right.
And not just that, they make sure that, if I'm going to serve a meal, I want to make sure that meal is...
Right.
Because I'm going to share in the profit.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, that has to be...
Is the success rate still the same for restaurants? Wasn't it always like 1 out of every 10 make it? And has that gone up or down?
I don't know.
Our industry has spent more money on
I think
food.
it's a regional thing, a local thing. I think it varies within the industry, types of restaurant. I really don't know. I mean, I see a lot of places that are growing. I see a lot of places that are failing for different reasons. So I don't know if there's a real... I don't know what the most recent statistics are.
Right, so I feel it would be probably localized anyway, because you see a lot of the restaurants and they'll be like, oh, we've been here, especially in the city, we've been here since the 30s, or we've been here for 100 years serving pizza slices,
You know what's interesting? You mentioned that, because I got a call. I do a lot of co-broking with a lot of people in the industry, in the real estate industry. And because we specialize, I'll get a call from a commercial broker somewhere, and they'll say, gee, can you help us out with this? I got a call a couple of months ago from a broker on the Cape who had a $10 million restaurant, pub, nightclub. And so he said, I need somebody that specializes. Can you take a look at it? So I went down and looked at it, and we put a deal together at $7 million. That had been in business for 45 years. And in succession, the kids didn't want it.
Right.
And so they put it on the market. So in terms of the longevity of places, there are some they're just now starting to turn over because the owners have gotten older. The same thing happened to Christo's. Remember Christo's in Brockton?
Yeah.
That was there 50 years.
Right.
The owner died, And within a year, the sellers, the daughter,
Right.
sold it off.
No, I remember Christo's, but he had an apartment above the restaurant.
Did he never told anybody about?
No, because he was there so much.
Yeah, he was.
He lived there. He basically lived in his restaurant because, he had to be there all the time. When the restaurant was open, he was there.
Well, it's funny because I used to have, back in the 70s, I had a restaurant on the Cape, and one of them was a big restaurant. And several times I'd fall asleep on the bench. I'd be counting money, and I'd get tired and fall asleep. And
It was that much money.
It was good in those days.
Right.
The custodian would wake me up, and I go, "Oh my God, I fell asleep."
But it's an interesting business because you really have to be committed to it.
It's going to be a passion.
Yeah,
It definitely has to be a passion.
and I know a lot of the owners, they're not chefs. You
No,
know.
they're not. No, I mean, I think I see a lot of times if you can make lunch for yourself, you figure you can run a restaurant.
Right.
And so a lot of people get into this business that aren't really qualified. I always tell people if you haven't been working in a restaurant at least a couple of years, don't even think about buying a restaurant,
Right.
Because you're just not going to make it.
Well, it's customer service at the highest level. I mean, it's 90% of your job is customer service, making sure the food's on time, making sure the people are happy with it, making
Right.
You know,
You have
going
all
on
these
dressing,
key,
creating that environment for everybody.
you have all those key recipes that you need to have in place to
Plus,
make
you
it
have
successful.
to also manage all your staff and make sure they're happy. So that's also they're also your customer to make sure they're happy to go transfer that to other.
Well, one of the
tables.
things that I've noticed is that steak is a steak.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you go to one place versus another? It's not about the steak. It's not necessarily, and a lot of times it is food, but a lot of times it's the ambiance, it's the service, it's the personality of the place. Because you go back to a place where they recognize you.
Right.
Rick, how you doing? Eric, how you doing? And the food's the food.
Yeah.
But because you've been identified, so to speak, you feel comfortable, and so you keep going back.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think has made the 99s. They're like the local pub. You go in, people tend to gravitate to the same 99.
Right.
It's not about the food, although it is. I go there all the time, but they go because it's comfortable.
Right.
And that's the whole idea.
Yeah, because we go to a pizza place,
Yep.
Dina's Pizza
Right.
in Rockland, and
Oh, I sold Dina's. I sold them the Omelet Factory in Pembroke.
Nice.
Nice people.
Yeah.
Very,
Love the
very successful
Yeah.
I love the
operation.
Omelet Factory.
but they
too.
all work there, the whole family.
That's absolutely
Yeah.
right.
But now they have a pizza that's called the Rick's Pizza.
they got a Rick special for him.
Yeah,
But I was
so-
saying that. That's what I was going to say about the 99 as well. It reminds me much of like the Townhouse of Pizza, where it's your town's pizza. It's 99's your town's pub, and it became that because they moved in for a lot of the other restaurants that didn't make it. That fell off, like you said.
I'll tell you a
that
funny
maybe
story.
passed off.
I saw Charlie Doe, the founder of the 99 years ago, and we got to talking about his restaurant. And he says, "I'm not in the restaurant business." I said, "Excuse me?" He says, "Dennis." He said, "I'm not in the restaurant business. I'm in the real estate business." He says, "I own every piece of real estate. The restaurant only pays the mortgage." Oh, wow. That's interesting. And that's
That's a great concept.
he,
I
the
mean, now
lands.
you own all this property.
Unless you live in the Pacific Rim, there's not a lot of new land being made.
What I find is that the restaurants that I pick up as listings, the ones with real estate, they have a premium because people don't want to be paying a landlord.
Right.
Landlords tend to be indifferent, and at the end of your lease, it's potluck whether you're going to have an extension or whether
Right.
you're out of business.
You have less control.
Right.
Well, we got to go to a break, but this is a great topic, especially for people that are interested in whether the economy is booming now or that it's not, and retail is going in restaurants are going in the right direction. This interview is brought to you by Command Security Corporation. Is the nation's most trusted and experienced provider of affordable contract security services. Command Security Corporation offices nationwide and operations at numerous major international airports. They provide complete, customized, and cost-effective security solutions for industries, businesses, institutions, and organizations of all sizes. To find out more how Command Security Corporation can solve your security needs, contact John Dunleavy at 800-791-9102 or go to commandsecurity.com. That's John Dunleavy at 800-791-9102 or go to commandsecurity.com. And we'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network.
Rick Kaplan and Eric Wilson, right here on the Money Matters Radio Network and online at moneymattersboston.com.
And we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan with Eric Wilson, my co-host. And our next part of the interview is brought to you by New England Restaurant Brokers, recognized leader in the sale of food and liquor businesses for over 30 years. New England Restaurant Brokers' team of restaurant specialists have sold hundreds of food and liquor businesses. If you'd like to buy, sell, or develop a food or liquor business, call New England Restaurant Brokers at 617-721-9655 or go to NEREJRadio.com. Again, that's New England Restaurant Brokers at 617-721-9655 or email NERB at Comcast.net. Again, that's NERB at Comcast.net. And we have Dennis Serpone of New England Restaurant Brokers here in the studio. And we've been talking about what's trending in the restaurants and how the restaurant business really works. And actually, Dennis was mentioning at the beginning of the last segment of the interview about he's looking for brokers. So if you're interested in getting into the field, give Dennis a call.
It's a great little business. Typically, you can make anywhere from 50. If you work part time, you can make $50,000 a year easily. And I had one year where my top broker made $500,000.
And when can I sign up?
Tomorrow. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. I got a call from an accountant recently, and he said, Dennis, would you be interested in a convenience store in Jamaica Plain? Well, Jamaica Plain's inner city. We weren't crazy about it. So I asked one of my brokers, I said, "Are you interested in a convenience store?" Yeah, okay. We went down to look at it, not knowing what we were going to get to. And it was a 5,000 square foot building with the real estate. We ended up selling it for $2.1 million.
Wow. Commission
6%. Wow. So it's like $120,000 commission. He gets half of it. So it's not
Who
a bad.
Who gets the other half?
Friends of mine.
Yeah, nice.
Friends and family. But we also, and the restaurant I was talking about earlier, the one on the Cape, that was a $7 million deal, and that's our share. That's going to be about $200,000.
Wow.
So, and we split that evenly, with the brokers. So
right.
It's a great little business, and our minimum commission is $10,000. So even if we sell a small pizza place, there's a $10,000 commission. So it's relatively easy work. You work part-time, spare time if you want, or if you work at full-time, you can make a ton of money.
So, what's the average broker sell a year? How many restaurants?
My average broker probably sells 3 to 5 a year individually.
Yeah.
Some are doing more. It's the 80-20 rule.
Right.
Yeah. Out of 20 brokers, probably 4 or 5 are really, really full-time, excellent. The others play with it. They enjoy it. Subsequently, we need more brokers.
So is that because there's so many people out there looking for restaurants,
yes.
or there's so many restaurants that are going on the market?
We're missing so many places. I drive down the road and I go, there's another one for sale. There's another one gone. There's another one changing the signs. I've never seen it busier. People are getting out and people are getting in. Mm-hmm. And the strong are getting stronger, the weak are getting weaker, and that ebb and flow.
I mean, I can see that business being, people turning them over quite a bit because it's a lot of work.
It's a ton of work.
You work 10 years in the business and you're working 7 days a week, 14, 15 hours a day. After 10 years, you're probably
tired.
Yeah.
But I tell you, what's interesting? Businesses, you'll appreciate this, businesses don't cost anything. And I've said that business costs zero. What are you talking about? If you buy a business that let's say makes $100,000 a year, and you pay $500,000 for that business, you're not going to live and die there. 5 years or 10 years from now, you're going to turn around and sell it. Well, if you make an assumption that if you paid $500,000 and you sell it 5 years from now for $500,000, that business costs you nothing.
Right.
Meanwhile, in that 5-year period, you made yourself $500,000.
Right.
Not a bad deal.
No.
Right.
Where else do you get a job like that?
Exactly right. So, and typically the $500,000 you pay for a business, it's seller finance. So you may have to put up $100,000 or $150,000 to get into the business. The balance is paid by the business, and then at the end of 5 or 10 years, you sell the business for what you pay for it. The business costs you nothing.
So how many people that What's the average time frame that someone would get into a restaurant?
To complete a deal, to buy a restaurant?
Well, not so much to buy it, but when they buy a restaurant,
How long do they stay?
How often do they usually?
I would say they turn over anywhere from 5 to 7 years. I sold the same restaurant 5 times in 10 years.
Is that right?
Every couple of years, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months. But I sold one restaurant 5 times in 10 years.
Well, that's
and each time for more money.
Where is the hottest area in terms of counties that's really turning over?
Right now, Boston, Cambridge, population, the colleges. I mean, you can't get any better than Boston and Cambridge. However, the lifestyle centers in the suburbs are extremely hot. The affluent towns, the Winchesters, the Concords, great markets to be in. I had a pizza shop for sale in Cohasset, and we didn't take the listing. It was way overpriced, but they were selling pizzas for $27. A pizza for $27.
$27.
It was a gourmet pizza.
Yeah,
$27.
Huh.
But they could get it because it was Cohasset.
Right.
And some of those people would pay for it. And Deluxeberry next door would be delivering. They'd be delivering the $27 pizza to Duxbury.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's my neck of the woods. I wouldn't pay $27.
Imagine that.
No,
$27 for.
But most places around there is about $18 to $20
Right.
for a large pizza to begin with. I mean, even if you go to like Papagino's is like $16.99 because they know that's the prices that they've set in the South Shore.
I went out for pizza Saturday with my son. Oh, Sunday with my son. We got 2 pizzas and chicken fingers. And now you know why I look the way I look. And the whole bill came to $25.
That's solid. Well, you live in.
If I moved to Cohasset, I got 1 pizza for $27.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, you must have been. How long was that business in line? Was he open for a long time? And
I don't know.
Decided to sell.
I don't know. I really know. We started getting into it, and it was the owner was. You get people who are unrealistic. You get sellers who are unrealistic. If, it's the old story. If you get me $1 million, I'll sell it.
Right.
It's not worth it, so you kind of just walk away from it.
It's kind of the 2007 thing where everybody thought, "Hey, my house is worth $800,000."
Exactly
It's
right.
worth $250,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people have that, and because I remember I got this, and it was like.
Well, you also, when you're buying a business, and whether it be a restaurant or any other type, you have to be realistic when you own a business. You have to look at a lot of things. You have to be realistic in how many people you have to put in for as employees, and realistic on
how many seats you get to fill every night, things like that.
Well, what's fascinating.
When you're selling it.
What's fascinating is one of my brokers was telling me he went to list a restaurant in Wellesley, and the restaurant legitimately is worth somewhere in the 175 range with half down if you would sell the financing. The owner was adamant that he wanted 260, and he was and wouldn't listen. So the bottom line was, my broker said, "Look, he said, I'll tell you what, give it to another broker, learn from experience, and then 6 months from now, if it hasn't sold, call me." Right. Now he's an educated seller,
right?
And you realize that the market's the market, and people don't if anything, they're underpaying for the values. The retail value of restaurants has been diminished over the last year because of the cost of operating. The margins are slimmer. The cost of operating is increased, so the net profit margins are smaller.
Right.
So sellers don't realize it, and they think that there's somebody naive who's going to walk through the door with a fistful of cash just because they want it, and they're going to sell it at the price they want. And the fact of the matter is that doesn't happen.
Well, I think that again, like you're saying, as someone who's experienced seller, I mean, the market does determine it. I think people since that 2007 big crisis that we went through, I think a lot of people are now experiencing that, hey, we're never going to overpay again. The market's never going to get that big again because people understand you just put us in huge 5-year recession. We're not going to be able to allow that again.
Well, it's even more than that. I think today everybody wants to buy. Every deal has to be a win-win. Mm-hmm. Right. And the buyer has to win. And if he doesn't feel like he's winning, if he doesn't feel like he's getting a good deal, he doesn't buy.
Right.
And the seller typically, unless he's very motivated, if he doesn't feel like he's getting his price, he may not sell.
Right.
But it's got to be a win-win. But the buyer is in control. This is a buyer's market. And if the buyer doesn't feel he's got a good deal, It's not going to buy.
So that must make your job a little bit more tricky, seeing as you have to make both sides happy all the time. And both, I know, from just in anything right at this time, everybody wants, I want the best deal I can possibly get,
Absolutely.
which means more than likely you're taking advantage of the other party
Right.
to
Well,
get it.
it's an education.
Right.
Once you've been in this business long enough, you know the nuances of the business,
Right.
and you should be able to explain to a buyer why you can't necessarily get the best deal. See, buyers and sellers both focus on the selling price.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really the key. The key is how much money you're going to make while you own it.
Mm-hmm.
Forget if you have to pay $25,000 more for a business, but you're going to make $150,000 a year. What's that $25,000 difference? You know, you want to pay $300, and the seller's looking for $325, and you say that $25,000 doesn't mean anything over the span of 5 years.
Right.
When you're making yourself $150,000 a year.
And so you set the value for most of these.
Yeah,
people.
we know. Yeah, I know. People ask me. I do a lot of appraisals, and I do a lot of expert testimony when there's a controversy. But the fact of the matter is, I know what it's worth because I'm dealing with the marketplace,
Right.
and it's not necessarily the conventional way of appraising a business or a piece of real estate. It's really about market value. And the person who knows the market value is me because we're dealing with the marketplace every single day.
Right.
So that when somebody says, I think my business is on what basis? You know, how do you, just because it feels good? And that's typically what happens. A seller in his mind says, this is what I want. It may not be realistic.
Right.
It's got to be a number that the buyer feels he's getting a good deal. My job is to be able to modulate both attitudes and bring them to that center point, and that comes with credibility because I've been doing it for 30-odd years.
Right, and then you also mentioned, I think it was in the last part of the interview, the first part of the interview, is that the real estate comes into play as well. You know, so if they own
The
property
real estate,
as opposed
it's
to
worth a
leasing.
premium, absolutely. Whenever we get a listing with real estate, you can always command a premium over and above the value of the land or the building in the business because you tie the two together. With real estate, it's worth so much more.
Well, it must also be a little easier to sell with the real estate because that's purchasing the business and there's 3 years left on the lease. I mean, that
no one's going to buy it.
Right, that decreases the value.
Absolutely, no one's
Quite a
going to
bit.
buy it with a 3 year.
Right.
The problem, but there is a problem, and the problem is that the seller doesn't know what it's. If he's got the real estate, I've got a particular situation right now. It's a $2.4 million restaurant with a couple of rental incomes, but the owner picked a number of $2.4 million, and the buyer is saying, "I want the restaurant. It does make money, but 2.4 I think is too high." The seller doesn't want to have it appraised. So there's this vagueness out there. What is the real estate worth? The buyer doesn't know, and the seller doesn't really know. So they're at odds. You know, what do I do? So my solution is you buy the business with an option on the real estate at fair market value down the road. So somebody gets appraised. So the owner, the buyer of the restaurant, can somewhere down the road pull a plug and get it appraised, and it takes the edge off of what is it worth today.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's risky on both parts, though. You know,
Well,
the market goes way up, or
Right.
the market drops.
But at least
way
no
down.
one, at least one doesn't take advantage of the other.
Right. It's not hindering
Yeah.
the progress of
Right.
the situation.
The buyer gets what it's worth, and the seller gets what it's worth.
Because I can understand if someone owns their own property and they want to sell the business, the restaurant that's on that business, a lot of times they'll want to keep the property.
They do.
And then collect
Absolutely.
the rent.
Of course you do.
Right.
Right. You keep the rent,
Yeah.
and then
And it's
worst
so-
case scenario, it's a commercially zoned
Exactly.
real estate now, which is extremely valuable.
Yeah, I mean,
It's very, like I said, we're not getting more land. You know, everything's zoned out. So you can change zones through like voting and stuff like that, but most of the time it is what it is.
so what would happen if someone buys a restaurant and then they say, you know what, I want this restaurant and I want to buy this property down the street and I'm going to buy this restaurant and move it down the street. Does that ever happen? People do that?
No.
No?
No, I've never seen it. It may, but I've never seen that. Typically, if once you buy a restaurant, you want to cultivate the goodwill that's been established.
Right, you want to
Right.
keep it there.
and you keep it there. You know.
Yeah,
But they'll open up. They may open up. In the next town, another
Right.
place with real estate if they're able to get a hold of one. But
Because generally pizza places, things like that, they're usually in a strip plaza. Unless someone has an awful lot of money to buy a restaurant in a strip plaza, that probably doesn't happen too often.
yeah, I mean, it happens. But you know what I found, interestingly enough, through the years, I've met a lot of guys a number of people who've had pizza places, and pizza places have always been very profitable because your cost of goods is so low.
Right.
So you get a nice profit margin. And those that are successful, they typically will sell their pizza place and buy a small strip, a 5-unit strip,
Right.
4-unit strip, and put a pizza place in there. So they're their own
Right.
tenant,
Right.
and they collect rents from and that's a great little business. Owning a small strip, 4, 5, 6 stores is it's an annuity.
Right.
So they actually get out of the restaurant business and now are in the
Or-
real
or
estate.
the- or the-
You got
yeah.
to think that. I mean,
I mean,
pizza is the number one food bought and eaten in the world, not just America, but it's obviously our number one too. You can go anywhere. There's
We're
at least
pizza.
3 or 4 pizza places in each town because pizza is just gives you everything
Well,
you want.
the other side of that is I was talking to a gentleman, I forgot where it was, but he put his place in the market and it was reasonably priced. But I said, why are you selling? He's Dennis. He said, when I came here 10 years ago, there were only 7 pizza places
Right.
in town. Now there were 22 pizza places in this town.
It's
The
insane.
population has not grown
Right.
that much.
Right.
So what's happening is they're all splitting the pie.
Yeah.
Right.
So when he was doing 20,000 a week, he's now down to 8,000 a week. Why? Because it's being spread
Right.
around all the others.
But aren't there any kind of regulations? Like if you go into, let's say we're here in Needham, how many restaurants are they going to, how many pizza restaurants are they going to allow into the town?
Yeah,
Don't
well-
they have a limitation of that?
No, I mean, legally, I don't think you can really stop something. However, coming over here today, I looked for Dunkin' Donuts. I couldn't find a Dunkin' Donuts. In some towns, there's 7 on a corner.
Right.
Right.
I could not find a Dunkin'. I went down Gould Street. I went down this street. I went down. I couldn't find a Dunkin' Donuts. What's with Needham?
Yeah, I don't know.
Starbucks must have got here first.
Maybe they banned them from Needham.
Yeah. No, I mean, I believe if you're right. I think she might be noon. If you go down here to the left and you come out of Gould
On
Street
Highland.
here, if you go out and go past, instead of coming like you come up to the lights
Yeah.
here, if
Go
you
the other
down
direction,
there, yeah, I
downtown?
think it's down on the right across from Hess, I believe.
Oh.
And that it's like a little shopping plaza by Panera Bread and stuff.
Yeah,
I
that's,
I went
believe-
the wrong direction.
yeah, that's going into
To
towards Newton.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
like
but-
you said, there is one of those, and that's where pizza's kind of at too. I think is the same as the coffee market. You could open up another pizza place today, and most of them are you might lose a little bit of money, but there's still so much money to be made
You know what's
in that
hot
industry.
right now? Breakfast places.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
huge
There's a
fan of
million.
breakfast
There's a
places.
million Dunkin' Donuts, a million Egg McMuffins.
Right.
But if you want an omelet, if you want 2 eggs over easy,
Yeah.
it's all profit.
Right.
And you got to look for a place because
Yeah,
they're
don't
not
have-
everywhere.
There's not as many. as
Although
there
I
used to
just
be.
saw today that Taco Bell is going to start.
They're
See
gonna
what I'm
start
saying?
this.
Because there's a huge market there.
Yeah.
People love to
But
eat
again,
breakfast.
if it's the Egg McMuffin, the egg sandwiches, nobody. But if you go
the
almost,
omelet.
there is a place in Saugus. There was a closed restaurant, big restaurant, vacant space for a year, and then I went by there one day, and there's a breakfast place. I went in there for breakfast. The place is busy every single day. They do a huge business. Why? Because they do a full breakfast. The home fries are
Right.
unique. They just do a great job. Place is always busy. So that's a hot the breakfast, lunch, and the pizza places are the 2 most profitable parts of the industry right now.
Right.
Along with obviously liquor bars.
Right.
Of course.
Well, that would
Can't do
always,
without those.
Yeah, that would
Yeah,
always.
I wouldn't be able to work with Rick. No, I'm just kidding.
He's got a bottle on him right now.
Yeah, right. What do you think this coffee's filled with? No, are we taking a break and come back?
Yeah, why don't we take a break? We'll come right back. I'm just trying to think of, I had a question I wanted to ask Dennis, but now my mind just, that's what happens.
After we take a break, he'll come
That's
back.
what happens when you get to be my age. But the interview is brought to you by New England Restaurant Brokers, recognized leader in the sale of food and liquor businesses for over 30 years. New England Restaurant Brokers team of restaurant specialists have sold hundreds of food and liquor businesses. If you're looking to buy, sell, or develop a food or liquor business, call New England Restaurant Brokers at 617-721-9655 or go to NEREJRadio.com. Again, that's New England Restaurant Brokers at 617-721-9655 or email nerb@comcast.net. That's nerb@comcast.net. We'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network.
Rick Kaplan is right here on the Money Matters Radio Network.
And we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan with my co-host Eric Wilson. And the next part of the closing part of our interview is brought to you by NEBFM 2014. Do you sell to facility managers, building owners, or property managers? See thousands of these decision makers at the Northeast Buildings and Facility Management Show, June 18th and 19th at the Boston Convention Center. Go to proexpos.com. That's proexpos.com. And we're here with Dennis Serpone of New England Restaurant Brokers, and we're coming to the close of the interview with Dennis, who has given us a lot of information and has told us how to get into it.
I haven't decided what I'm going to do when I leave here, if I'm going to be a restaurant broker or an owner. Now that I've learned so much about how to do both.
But that's one of the nice things that Dennis is offering to our listeners, is that he has opportunities for them if they do want to be a broker in the industry. He has plenty of openings.
And what's nice is I think it's an opportunity for some people who are underemployed, especially professional people who are underemployed. As long as you're somewhat motivated to make money. I mean, there are people that want to do something on the side and so forth. I really like to focus on people who really want to make money and willing to go out of their way a little bit. There's a lot of, and I don't assume that anybody has the experience. So I take a neophyte, and I'll take you from soup to nuts, walk you right through the whole process. I go prospecting with you, walk you through the deals, and a lot of times I do the whole deal for my brokers, just because my job with my brokers is to put money in their pocket. Mm-hmm. When they're successful, I'm successful.
Right.
So I work really diligently to help them become sufficiently successful.
Is there a licensing process to become a restaurant
Interestingly, in Massachusetts, if you're leasing space or you're selling real estate, you have to have a real estate license. But if you're just handling businesses, you don't need a license. And that's a great question, because a lot of people say, well, I can't do it because I don't have a license. Don't need it. I encourage all my brokers, I would say three-quarters of them have their license, the rest are getting their license. But you don't need it to start in this business.
So that way, if you do have your your real estate license, now you can get a double commission.
Of course,
we pay you more. You go to the landlord, and you go to for selling the business.
I mean, if you're dealing with a restaurant that has real estate and you end up putting real estate, you can't get paid unless you have a license.
Right.
So in essence, you're doubling your commission.
Is there a difference between commercial and residential licenses?
No.
No?
Same license.
Same license?
Yeah, Massachusetts, it's the same. I think there are different classes you need to take.
Well, there's continuing education,
of course,
which is a pain in the neck, but everybody has to do it.
Yeah, because a lot of
Does
commercial
keep you
brokers
sharp,
have all
though.
those
It keeps
titles,
you sharp.
all those acronyms after
Yeah,
that.
of course. I see it all the time on
We're
LinkedIn.
we're licensed in New Hampshire New Hampshire and Massachusetts. So there's a constant education process.
Right.
I finished one course in New Hampshire, and I got started up in Massachusetts. I go back and forth. But yeah, it keeps you sharp.
Yeah, right.
So if anyone wants to be a broker in the selling restaurants and bars,
bars,
or if they want to do the other
convenience
side too,
stores,
if they have a place to sell,
right?
And we're doing hotels, on Cape Cod. I especially have a solid need for representation on the Cape. I only have one broker on the Cape, and there's 143 motels and hotels on the Cape, plus a plethora of food operations. And I have one person on the Cape. So if anybody's listening that's living on the Cape wants to work the Cape, love to talk to you.
And the summer's coming, so that's
Summer's
a perfect place.
Great time.
I know.
Great time.
Yeah, so
I'm almost throwing this radio show right out the window. Be like, hey, I live in Plymouth. I'm right near the Cape.
Well, they must have a lot of restaurants that turn over.
They do.
I mean, seasonal areas in the down the Cape.
Yeah, plus it's booming too. They had a big growth in the Cape, especially right after Katrina in 2003 and 4. So they had a big boom down there with people moving to the Cape.
Well, I'm involved with flipping houses on the Cape.
Nice.
We have an office in West Yarmouth, and the number of people who are buying homes on the Cape. My brother and nephew are flipping the houses, and they're bombarded with business. They got people waiting in line for these new houses. They're buying the foreclosures, doing the normal flipping process, and they're doing one after another.
It's all day down there if you want. Now,
Cape hot,
especially on that 195 corridor, or that route. What's it? Not route. What's the one?
Route 6.
Yeah, Route 6. Right across that.
See, Dennis came a long way from falling asleep counting his money on that bench and the restaurant
to here.
So now he hired someone to count the money.
Yeah, right. Nice.
He doesn't have to do that anymore.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining us today, Dennis. We really appreciate it.
This is great.
Yeah.
And,
so if someone wants to get a hold of you, I know we just mentioned it.
The easiest way to get me, because my voicemail gets full very quickly. The easiest way to get me is to email me at NERB for New England Restaurant Brokers, NERB@Comcast.net, and I'll return your emails and meet with you and talk about what we do, how we do it, and how to make money.
Do you ever call it NERB?
NERB. Oh, yeah. NERB Central.
I love NERB.
I go to the bank and they're going, the NERB's here.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good name.
You're a NERB.
NERB. You're a NERB. I am a NERB. Thank you.
Well, we thank Dennis for coming on, and Dennis will have a segment on our show
next month as well.
The next few months. So if you have any restaurant questions for Dennis, you can always email us at radio@nerej.com, and we'd be more than happy to pass them on to Dennis, and we can answer your questions for you.
Appreciate that.
And our segment has been brought to you by NEBFM 2014. Do you sell to facility managers, building owners, or property managers? See thousands of these decision makers at the Northeast Building and Facilities Management Show, June 18th and 19th at the Boston Convention Center. Go to proexpos.com. That's proexpos.com. And we'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network.
It's New England Real Estate Journal Radio on the Money Matters Radio Network and online at moneymattersboston.com.
And we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan with my co-host Eric Wilson, and we are coming to the close of another show, Eric. Unfortunately, they could go on all day.
Unfortunately, this is not all we do.
But our show has been brought to you by the city of Hartford, Connecticut, actually. Right. And they have an area of Hartford, Connecticut. It's the north downtown area of Hartford, and it's called Dono. And they're looking for developers, and they're looking for investors to come into the area and revitalize that whole area. They have a whole plan in the city, and it looks like it's going to be a great hotspot coming forward in the next few years.
Well, it's definitely an opportunity for anybody that was looking to build.
It's a great opportunity.
Right.
There'll be restaurants.
We went down there. It was really
hotels,
nice.
Condominiums.
We've seen all the pictures. It looks really good what they're trying to do down there. So definitely.
If you'd like to have more information, you contact us at radio@nerej.com, and we can forward you along, or you can call the city of Hartford, Connecticut, or go to their website, which is hartford.ct. Gov. And nice. Eric has some events.
We'll be coming up. We got first and foremost next week is March 18th at the EBC in the morning. We'll be doing a presentation. I'll be doing a little bit of moderation of introducing LinkedIn and kind of giving the basics before they open up to their expert panels with keynote speaker Susan Shelby from Rhino PR. The 19th, I'll be talking with USGBC up in the city. We'll be giving a 15-20 minute presentation on using social media to benefit their career. I believe it's for the young professionals. March 20th is the IREM event going to the Anheuser-Busch Tour. It's also the New England Real Estate Journal's event. Cocktails and Conversations hosted at Mr. Sid's.
Don't forget that one.
The following week, March 27th, is the big non-gala put on by Building Impact, which is basically a workshop for community and charity events and organization that puts together and helps buildings kind of collaborate with all of their tenants to put together a little charity and focus. That's coming up. Also, April 5th, we have the Running for Row put on by Service Master by Gilmore, trying to help a marathon survivor, Roseanne Sedoy, out of National Development. So that's a really big event. If you can check that out as well. That's hashtag Run for Row. And also the HELP conference on April 7th and 8th. For all the hospitality, equity, and lending perspectives. It's a big conference. I believe we did it last year. We did a live show from there, which was really cool.
And we're going to do it again this year.
We're doing it again. I know May... We have also, obviously, NEBFM in June, and I believe we have something in May as well.
Well, now you're getting a little ahead of it.
I know, we're months.
Save some for next week's show.
It's like Wedding Crashers. This is networking season,
Save
right?
some
This
for
is
next
trade
week's
show season.
I want to thank Dennis Serpone.
Oh, MedEd Facility. Sorry, April 1st and 2nd. That's what I meant, not May. April 1st and 2nd. Check out the MedEd Facility show. We gave away a free exhibit pass. This week, we're also giving away free conference passes with value at $500 if you sign up and join the lottery.
That's right. And I want to thank Dennis Serpone from New England Restaurant Brokers for coming in.
Thank you.
And I would also like to thank Command Security Corporation, NEBFM, and also the New England Real Estate Journal.
Yeah, and also downtown North Hartford, Dono.
Yes, and the show has been brought to you by the New England Real Estate Journal, bringing together the commercial real estate industry for over 50 years. Find us at NEREJ.com. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor for the show, call 800-654-4993 or email us at radio@nerej.com. Again, that's 800-654-4993 or email radio@nerej.com, and this deal is done.